Hi guys and welcome to Crazy Pepper Revenge. This channel is all about crazy true stories, stuff that happens in real life when things get a little bit messy.
My name is Harold Brewster, and for 30 years, I was the kind of man pharmaceutical companies feared most. As a senior FDA investigator, I'd built a reputation for following paper trails that others missed, for connecting dots that seemed unconnectable. I'd exposed 17 major criminal enterprises, testified before Congress twice, and sent more than a few executives to federal prison. The work was meticulous, methodical, and deeply satisfying. Then I retired at 50, thinking I'd earned some peace. The weeks leading up to my birthday had been different. Charlotte, my wife of 25 years, kept touching my arm at dinner, her eyes sparkling with secrets. "Just wait, Harold. Something big is coming." She'd been working late at the hospital where she served as administrative director, but she always made time for these cryptic hints. My son Ethan, 24 and still living in our basement while finding himself, would grin whenever the subject came up. "Dad, you're gonna love this. Mom's been planning for months." Even my daughter Molly called from college more frequently than usual. "I can't wait for your birthday, Dad. Mom says it's gonna be epic." The anticipation built like pressure in a sealed container. After decades of forgotten birthdays and perfunctory celebrations, my family was finally making an effort. Maybe retirement had given them space to remember who I was, beyond the stern investigator who came home exhausted from dismantling corporate lies. Charlotte's behavior grew more animated as the date approached. She'd disappear for hours, claiming errands, returning with shopping bags she quickly hid. Phone calls ended abruptly when I entered rooms. Her laptop screen would snap shut if I walked past. "You're being paranoid," she laughed when I mentioned it. "Can't a wife plan a surprise without her husband turning into a detective?" The irony wasn't lost on me. 30 years of professional suspicion had trained me to notice patterns, inconsistencies, the small tells that revealed larger truths. But this was my family, my wife. Surely I could trust them with something as simple as a birthday celebration. 3 days before the big day, Charlotte's brother Mark stopped by unexpectedly. He ran a successful insurance agency downtown, drove a BMW, and had always treated me with barely concealed condescension. To him, I was the boring government worker who'd somehow landed his ambitious sister. "Harold!" he boomed, shaking my hand with excessive enthusiasm. "Ready for the big 5-0? "As ready as anyone can be for aging," I replied. Mark exchanged a look with Charlotte that I pretended not to notice. "Oh, you're going to love what Charlotte has planned. Absolutely love it." "I keep hearing that." "Trust me," Charlotte said, squeezing my shoulder. "This birthday is going to change everything." The morning of my 50th birthday arrived gray and drizzly, typical October weather for our New England town. I woke early, as always, and found Charlotte already gone. A note on her pillow read, "Gone to finalize everything. See you tonight for the big surprise. Love, C." I made coffee and sat in my study, surrounded by the case files I'd kept from my FDA days. Old habits. Even in retirement, I found comfort in the familiar weight of documentation, evidence, proof. The house felt unusually quiet. By noon, I started wondering when the festivities would begin. No phone calls, no visitors, no deliveries. Just the steady tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway and the distant hum of suburban life continuing around me. At 2 o'clock, I called Charlotte's cell, straight to voicemail. I tried Ethan, same result. Molly's phone rang 4 times before going to voicemail. "Hi, this is Molly. I'm probably somewhere amazing right now, so leave a message." The silence stretched. I walked through our split-level house, noting details with the same methodical attention I'd once applied to pharmaceutical fraud cases. Charlotte's coffee mug in the sink, still warm when I'd woken up. Ethan's bedroom door closed, but when I knocked, no answer. When I opened it, the bed was made, unusual for him, and his overnight bag was missing from the closet. By 4 o'clock, genuine concern had replaced anticipation. Had there been an emergency, an accident? But surely someone would have called me. I was contemplating calling hospitals when I remembered Charlotte's Instagram account. She'd started using social media more frequently in recent months, posting photos of hospital events and family gatherings. I rarely checked it, but something made me open the app on my phone. The most recent post was 4 hours old. The photo showed a luxury beach resort, crystal blue water, white sand, palm trees swaying in tropical breeze. In the foreground, raising champagne glasses, were the faces I knew better than my own reflection. Charlotte, radiant in a sundress I'd never seen before. Ethan, grinning beside a young woman I didn't recognize. Molly, tanned and laughing. My in-laws, Charlotte's parents, looking relaxed and happy. The caption hit me like a physical blow. Finally free for Harold's 50th. He won't even notice we're gone, LOL. Best birthday ever. Dash family time, hash paradise. 847 likes, dozens of comments, heart emojis, laughing faces. My sister had commented with 3 crying laughing emojis. I read the caption again. Then again, the words didn't change. He won't even notice we're gone. I set the phone down carefully on the kitchen table and stared at the empty house around me. The grandfather clock chimed 5 o'clock. Outside, Mrs. Wilkes was walking her dog, the same routine she'd followed for 15 years. Normal life continuing while my world quietly imploded. The methodical part of my mind, the investigator who'd spent 3 decades unraveling deceptions, began cataloging evidence. Charlotte's secretive behavior, the mysterious shopping trips, the hushed phone calls, the overnight bags I'd assumed were for a surprise party. They were, just not the kind I'd expected. I opened my laptop and began what I did best, investigating. Charlotte's social media revealed a timeline I'd been too trusting to see. Photos from the past month showed increasing excitement about upcoming plans. Comments from friends asking about the big trip that I'd somehow missed. References to finally doing something for ourselves. The resort was in the Bahamas. 5-star accommodations, the kind of place that cost more per night than most people made in a week. I found the booking confirmation in Charlotte's email. She'd never been careful about password security. 7 rooms, 10 guests, 5 days, 4 nights. Paid for with our joint credit card. The one connected to our joint savings account? The account I'd been building for 30 years while she'd been spending. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Saw Charlotte's post. Sorry, man, that's rough. Steve Morrison. My old friend from the gym, back when I'd had time for friends. We'd lost touch after my retirement, but apparently he followed Charlotte on social media. Another text, this one from my neighbor. Harold, is everything okay? Saw some posts online. The humiliation was public, broadcast to hundreds of people. My wife had turned my 50th birthday into a social media joke, and I was the punchline. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd forgotten who I used to be. For 30 years, I'd been the man pharmaceutical companies hired expensive lawyers to avoid. I'd built cases that destroyed corporations, sent executives to prison, recovered hundreds of millions in fraudulent profits. I'd done it by being patient, methodical, and absolutely ruthless when the evidence was clear. I'd been retired for 6 months. Apparently, that was long enough for my family to forget that Harold the boring retiree used to be Harold the apex predator. I made a fresh pot of coffee and opened the filing cabinet in my study. Inside were copies of every important document in our lives. Insurance policies, property deeds, business partnerships, and most importantly, the family trust I'd established 5 years earlier. Charlotte had signed the papers without reading them carefully. You handle the financial stuff, honey. I trust you. She'd been busy with a hospital fundraiser at the time, more concerned with seeding charts than asset protection. The trust was a masterpiece of legal architecture, designed by one of the best estate attorneys in the state. Every significant asset flowed through it. The house, the vacation property, business investments, even the kids' college funds. It provided tax advantages and protected our wealth from potential lawsuits. It also gave the trustee, me, complete discretionary control over distributions. I'd built it to protect our family's future. I'd never imagined I might need to protect myself from our family. The trust documents were clear. I could suspend distributions pending review of beneficiary conduct. I could freeze access to trust-controlled accounts if I determined such action was in the trust's best interests. I could even revoke beneficiary status entirely under certain circumstances. All perfectly legal. All designed to prevent exactly the kind of financial irresponsibility my family was currently demonstrating in the Bahamas. I spent the evening reading every page, every clause, every provision. By midnight, I had a complete understanding of the power I'd unknowingly given myself. On day 2 of my abandoned birthday celebration, I began making phone calls. First, to the bank. I need to place a temporary hold on all accounts associated with the Brewster Family Trust pending a routine review. Of course, Mr. Brewster. How long should we expect the review to take? Hard to say. Could be weeks. Could be longer. Next, I called the credit card companies. Suspicious activity on the accounts. Possible unauthorized use. Please freeze all cards immediately and require in-person verification before reactivating. Then I contacted my attorney, the same man who'd drafted the trust. Richard, I need to exercise some of the discretionary powers we built into the trust documents. What kind of situation are we dealing with, Harold? The kind that requires immediate action to protect the trust's assets. Richard had been practicing estate law for 40 years. He didn't ask for details he didn't need to know. I'll prepare the necessary documentation. How quickly do you need this processed? Today? While I waited for the legal paperwork, I turned my attention to my family's other activities. Ethan's car dealership job had always seemed too lucrative for someone with his limited experience. A few phone calls to former colleagues revealed why. The dealership had been flagged multiple times for title washing, a scheme where stolen or flood-damaged vehicles are given clean titles and sold to unsuspecting buyers. Molly's nonprofit for underprivileged college students had raised over $50,000 in the past year. The organization's public filings showed administrative costs consuming 90% of donations. Administrative costs that seemed to correlate suspiciously with Molly's spring break trips and designer wardrobe. Mark's insurance agency had been my brother-in-law's pride and joy for 15 years. A little deeper digging revealed a pattern of inflated claims and phantom policies that would make federal prosecutors very interested. I'd spent my career following money trails. My family had left me a roadmap. On day 3, my phone started buzzing. The first call came from Charlotte. At 6:47 a.m., I let it go to voicemail. Harold, there's some kind of problem with our credit cards. The hotel says they're all declined. Can you call the bank? I'm sure it's just a mistake. The second call came 20 minutes later, this time from Ethan. Dad, something's wrong with my account. The dealership says my paycheck bounced. Can you help me figure this out? By noon, I had 17 missed calls and 43 unread text messages. I responded to none of them. Instead, I drove to the post office and mailed a series of anonymous letters. One to the state attorney general's office, detailing the car dealership's title washing operation. One to the IRS, questioning the financial practices of Molly's nonprofit. One to the insurance commission, suggesting they take a closer look at Mark's agency. Each letter was typed, not printed. No fingerprints, no electronic trail, just facts, dates, and suggestions for where investigators might want to look. Then I went home and waited. The messages became increasingly desperate as day 3 stretched into evening. Charlotte, 3:22 p.m. Harold, please call me back. There's been some kind of mistake with the bank. They won't tell me anything over the phone. Ethan, 4:15 p.m. Dad, this is serious. My car payment bounced. My credit card is maxed. I don't understand what's happening. Molly, 5:03 p.m. Daddy, please help us. We're stuck at the resort. They won't let us check out until the bill is paid. Mark, 5:07 p.m. Harold, I don't know what game you're playing, but Charlotte is my sister. Fix this. My mother-in-law, 6:23 p.m. Harold, we raised you better than this. Your family needs you. I read each message carefully, the same way I'd once reviewed evidence in pharmaceutical fraud cases. Panic, confusion, anger. But not once did anyone apologize. Not once did anyone acknowledge what they'd done. They were sorry they'd been caught, sorry there were consequences, but not sorry for the betrayal itself. At 8:30 p.m., my phone rang. Charlotte again. This time I answered. Harold, thank God. Listen, there's been some kind of banking error. No error, I said quietly. What do you mean, no error? Our accounts are frozen. The credit cards aren't working. The hotel is threatening to call the police if we don't pay our bill. The trust accounts are under review. As trustee, I've suspended distributions pending investigation of beneficiary conduct. Silence, then. What are you talking about? What investigation? The investigation into why my family abandoned me on my 50th birthday to take a luxury vacation paid for with trust funds. Harold, it was just, we thought you'd want some time alone. You're always saying how you like peace and quiet. You thought I'd want to be alone on my birthday? It wasn't meant to hurt you. It was just, we needed a break. Things have been tense lately. Tense? You know what I mean. Since you retired, you've been different, distant. We thought some space might be good for everyone. I almost laughed. So you decided to publicly humiliate me on social media and steal money from our joint accounts to fund your escape. We didn't steal anything. That's our money too. Actually, it's not. It's trust money. And I'm the trustee. Another long silence. When Charlotte spoke again, her voice had changed. The panic was still there, but underneath it was something harder. Something I'd been too blind to see before. Fine, you want to play games? We'll play games. But you can't keep us here forever. We'll find a way home, and when we do, we're going to have a long conversation about your behavior. Looking forward to it. I hung up and poured myself a scotch. Outside, the October evening was crisp and clear. Mrs. Wilkes was bringing in her garbage cans, the same routine she'd followed for years. Normal life in a normal neighborhood, while 600 miles away, my family was learning that actions have consequences. The next morning brought news that my anonymous letters had found their mark. The local paper's website led with a story about a federal raid on Premier Auto Sales, the dealership where Ethan worked. 15 agents, boxes of evidence. The owner led away in handcuffs. The article mentioned that employees were being questioned about their knowledge of illegal activities. The state attorney general's office issued a press release about a crackdown on fraudulent nonprofits. 3 organizations were under investigation, including one called Students First Foundation, Molly's charity. Mark's insurance agency wasn't mentioned in the news yet, but that would come. These investigations took time. I knew the process better than most. My phone had been quiet since Charlotte's call, but at 11 a.m., it exploded with activity. Ethan, Dad, the FBI was at my work. They arrested Mr. Peterson. They want to talk to me. What do I do? Molly, Daddy, some investigators called about my nonprofit. They're asking for financial records. I'm scared. Charlotte, Harold, what did you do? I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I drove to the hotel downtown where I'd made a reservation the night before. A nice place, but not ostentatious. The kind of establishment that valued discretion. From my hotel room, I called Richard, my attorney. The trust documentation is ready, he said. But Harold, are you sure about this? Once you file these papers, it's going to be very difficult to undo. I'm sure. Your wife could contest this in court. With what money? And what grounds? The trust explicitly gives me discretionary authority over distributions. I'm exercising that authority. She could argue you're acting vindictively rather than in the trust's best interests. Richard, my beneficiaries stole trust funds to pay for a vacation they took specifically to humiliate me. How is protecting the trust from further theft not in its best interests? He sighed. I'll file the papers this afternoon. That evening, I received a call from an unknown number. Mr. Brewster, this is Detective Morrison with the Bahamas Police Service. We have several American citizens here who claim to be your family members. They're unable to pay their hotel bill and have requested we contact you. I see. They say there's been some kind of banking error. They're asking if you can wire money to cover their expenses. Detective, these individuals took money from our joint accounts without my knowledge or consent to fund this trip. I've reported the unauthorized charges to my bank and credit card companies. I'm not responsible for their debts. So you won't be sending money? I will not. What should I tell them? That they should contact the American Embassy if they need assistance getting home. After I hung up, I opened my laptop and checked Charlotte's Instagram again. The cheerful vacation photos had stopped. Her last post was from yesterday. A sunset over the ocean with the caption, "Sometimes paradise isn't what it seems." The comments had changed too. Instead of heart emojis and congratulations, people were asking questions. Is everything okay? Saw the news about Ethan's work? Hope you're safe. The court of public opinion was shifting. The same social media audience that had laughed at my humiliation was beginning to piece together the larger story. I closed the laptop and ordered room service. Tomorrow, my family would be coming home, and I had preparations to make. They returned on a commercial flight, having sold Charlotte's jewelry to pay for tickets. I knew because Mrs. Wilkes called to tell me she'd seen them pulling up in a taxi looking rather worse for wear. I wasn't there to witness their homecoming. I was at my attorney's office, signing the final papers that would restructure their lives forever. The house? Richard asked, reviewing the documents. Transferred to a new trust with myself as sole beneficiary. They can contest it, but the original trust gave me authority to restructure assets to protect them from creditor claims. The business investments? Liquidated. Proceeds moved to secure accounts. College funds? Protected in separate trusts for the grandchildren, if Ethan or Molly ever have any. But administered by me, not their parents. Harold, this is comprehensive. 30 years investigating fraud teaches you to be thorough. When I returned to the hotel that evening, my phone showed 47 missed calls and over 100 text messages. The digital flood Charlotte had promised, but not in the way she'd intended. I scrolled through them, noting the progression from confusion to anger to desperation. Charlotte, 2:15 p.m. The house is locked. Our key doesn't work. Charlotte, 2:23 Mom. Harold, this isn't funny. Where are you? Ethan, 2:45 p.m. Dad, there are boxes of our stuff on the front lawn. Charlotte, 3:10 p.m. The neighbors are staring. This is humiliating. Mark, 3:22 p.m. Harold, I'm coming over there to settle this man to man. Charlotte, 3:55 p.m. Mark says you changed the locks. That's illegal. You can't lock us out of our own house. Molly, 4:30 p.m. Daddy, please. Mom is crying. Just tell us what you want. Charlotte, 5:15 p.m. Fine. You want an apology? I'm sorry. We're all sorry. Now let us in. Charlotte, 6:02 p.m. The police say this is a civil matter. They won't make you open the door. Charlotte, 7:33 p.m. Harold, we have nowhere to go. Please. The last message had arrived 20 minutes ago. I know you're reading these. We're at the Motel 6 on Route 9. Call me. I set the phone aside and ordered dinner from room service. Outside my hotel window, the city sparkled in the darkness. Somewhere out there, my family was learning what it felt like to be abandoned. The next morning brought a knock on my hotel room door. I opened it to find Charlotte, looking older than I'd ever seen her. Her hair was unwashed, her clothes wrinkled, her eyes red from crying or lack of sleep. May I come in? I stepped aside. She walked to the window and stared out at the city for a long moment before turning to face me. I need to understand what's happening, Harold. Really understand. You abandoned me on my 50th birthday and publicly humiliated me on social media. Then you stole money from our joint accounts to pay for your escape. What's hard to understand? It wasn't supposed to be like that. It was just, we needed space, time to think. About what? She sat down heavily in the room's single chair. About us. About our marriage. About whether we still want to be a family. And you decide to think about it in the Bahamas. Harold, we've been growing apart for years. Since you retired, it's gotten worse. You sit in your study all day, reading old case files. You barely talk to us. You act like we're strangers living in your house. So you decided to make it official. We decided to take a break, give everyone some perspective, by lying to me about a birthday surprise. She looked away. That was cruel. I know it was cruel, but I didn't know how else to do it. You could have talked to me. When? You're always buried in those files, or working out in the garage, or doing anything that doesn't involve spending time with your family. I studied her face, looking for the woman I'd married 25 years ago. She was still there, buried under layers of resentment and disappointment, but still there. Charlotte, did it ever occur to you that I was struggling with retirement? That maybe I needed support instead of abandonment? You never said I shouldn't have had to say it. We sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, she spoke again. What happens now? That depends. On what? On whether you understand what you've done and whether you're willing to make it right. How? How do I make this right? I pulled out my phone and showed her the Instagram post. 847 people saw you mock me on my birthday. Your friends, my friends, our neighbors, our colleagues. You made me a laughingstock. She stared at the screen. I can delete it. Too late. Screenshots are forever. Then what do you want? I want you to understand that actions have consequences, that betrayal has a price, that the man you thought you could humiliate and abandon isn't as powerless as you believed. Her face went pale. The house is no longer yours. The money is no longer yours. Harold, you can't do this. We're married. I have rights. Read the prenup you signed. Read the trust documents you never bothered to understand. You have exactly the rights I choose to give you. She stood up abruptly, anger replacing desperation. This is insane. You're destroying our family over a stupid birthday party. I'm not destroying anything, Charlotte. You already did that. I'm just making sure you understand the consequences. The kids are adults who made adult choices. Ethan's probably going to prison for his involvement in that car dealership fraud. Molly's nonprofit is being investigated by the state. They'll have to live with their decisions, just like you'll have to live with yours. You did that. You turned them in. I reported criminal activity. What they chose to participate in is on them. Charlotte stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her recalculating everything she thought she knew about our relationship. "Who are you?" she whispered. "I'm the man you forgot you married." She left without another word. Through the hotel window, I watched her walk to her car, Mark's car, actually, since hers had been repossessed along with everything else. She sat behind the wheel for several minutes before driving away. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Mark. We need to talk." I deleted the message without responding. Mark would have his own problems soon enough. The insurance commission moved slowly, but they moved thoroughly. That afternoon, I received a call from Detective Morrison in the Bahamas. "Mr. Brewster, I wanted to follow up on that situation with your family members." "Yes?" "They've left the island, but there are still some outstanding bills. The hotel is asking if you'll accept responsibility." "No. The resort is considering legal action. They're welcome to try. They provided services to people who couldn't pay for them. That's a business risk, not my problem." "I see. Well, I wanted to give you the opportunity. I appreciate that, Detective, but my family made their choices. Now they get to live with them." After hanging up, I walked to the hotel's fitness center and spent an hour on the treadmill, thinking about the next phase. The immediate crisis was over. Charlotte knew where she stood. The kids understood that their criminal activities had consequences. Mark would soon learn that insurance fraud was a federal offense. But this was bigger than punishment. This was about rebuilding my life from the ground up, without the people who'd betrayed me. I had work to do. 3 weeks later, I sat in my attorney's office reviewing the final dissolution papers. Charlotte had tried to contest the trust restructuring, but her lawyer had quickly explained the futility of challenging documents she'd willingly signed. "She's agreed to the settlement," Richard said, sliding the papers across his desk. "The prenup holds. She gets the Honda and whatever personal belongings fit in it. Everything else stays with the trust. And the house? Yours. She's moved in with her brother, though that situation might be temporary, given his legal troubles." Mark's insurance agency had been raided the previous week. Federal agents had found evidence of a scheme involving fake policies and inflated claims dating back over a decade. The local news had covered it extensively, including interviews with bilked customers who'd discovered their coverage was worthless. What about the kids? Ethan's cooperating with federal investigators. His lawyer thinks he might avoid prison time if he testifies against his former boss. Molly's nonprofit has been dissolved, and she's facing potential fraud charges, but nothing's been filed yet. I signed the papers methodically, my signature ending 25 years of marriage with the same precision I'd once used to sign pharmaceutical fraud indictments. "Harold," Richard said carefully, "so I have to ask, do you ever regret this, any of it?" I considered the question. 3 weeks ago, I'd been a forgotten retiree whose family treated him like an embarrassing obligation. Now I was a free man with complete control over his life and finances. "Richard, they abandoned me on my 50th birthday and broadcast my humiliation to the world. Then they stole money to pay for their escape. What exactly should I regret?" Some people might say you overreacted. Some people have never been betrayed by everyone they trusted. I left the attorney's office and drove to my new apartment across town, small, quiet, and completely mine. No family photos on the walls, no shared spaces, no compromises. Just clean lines, comfortable furniture, and the peace I'd been seeking without knowing it. My phone had been quiet for days. Charlotte had stopped calling after the settlement was finalized. Ethan was too busy with lawyers to bother his father. Molly had sent one text. "I hope you're happy." I deleted it without responding. The only family member who'd reached out was my granddaughter, Emma, Ethan's 8-year-old daughter from his previous relationship. She'd found my number somehow and called the previous evening. "Grandpa Harold, Daddy says you're mad at everyone." "I'm not mad, sweetheart. I'm just living somewhere else now." "Can I still see you?" "Of course you can, anytime you want." "Daddy says you took all the money." "I took back what belonged to me." "There's a difference. I don't understand." "You will when you're older." "Will you make me pancakes if I visit?" "I'll make you the best pancakes you've ever had." That conversation had reminded me why I'd protected the children's education funds. Emma and her younger brother weren't responsible for their parents' choices. They deserved a chance at a better future. I was making coffee in my new kitchen when someone knocked on the door. Through the peephole, I saw a woman I didn't recognize. Mid-40s, professional dress, carrying a briefcase. "Mr. Brewster, I'm Jennifer Walsh from Channel 8 News. I was hoping to speak with you about the recent federal investigations involving your family members." "No comment. Sir, the public has a right to know about these fraud schemes. Your son's dealership bilked dozens of customers. Your daughter's charity took money meant for underprivileged students. Don't you think—" I opened the door. "Ms. Walsh, my son and daughter are adults who made their own choices. I'm not responsible for their criminal activity, and I'm not going to comment on ongoing investigations." "But you were the one who reported them, weren't you?" "I reported criminal activity to the appropriate authorities. That's what good citizens do, even when it's your own family, especially when it's your own family." She scribbled notes. "What about your wife? Sources say you've frozen her out of all marital assets. My ex-wife violated the terms of our prenuptial agreement and our family trust. She's facing the consequences of those violations. Some people are calling your response vindictive. Some people don't understand the difference between justice and revenge. And what is the difference, Mr. Brewster?" I looked at her for a long moment, considering how much to reveal. Revenge is emotional. Justice is systematic. Revenge lashes out. Justice builds a case, follows the evidence, and applies appropriate consequences. Which one is this? Ms. Walsh, I spent 30 years as an FDA investigator. I built cases against pharmaceutical companies that ended people for profit. I sent executives to prison for putting money ahead of public safety. This isn't revenge. This is just another case. She left after a few more questions, but I knew the story would air that evening. The local news loved family drama, especially when it involved fraud and betrayal. I was right. The story led the 6 o'clock broadcast, local family torn apart by federal fraud investigations. They interviewed neighbors, former colleagues, even the hotel manager from the Bahamas resort. Mrs. Wilkes appeared on camera, standing in front of her house. "Harold always seemed like such a quiet man. I never would have expected this." The reporter asked, "Expected what, the fraud or his response to it?" "Well, both, I suppose. But you have to admire someone who stands up for himself, don't you?" Charlotte declined to be interviewed, but Mark appeared briefly, his hands cuffed behind his back as federal agents led him from his office. The reporter noted that he was facing up to 20 years in prison if convicted on all charges. After the news ended, I sat in my quiet apartment and thought about the past month. 4 weeks ago, I'd been Harold the forgotten retiree. Tonight, I was Harold the man who'd systematically dismantled his own family's criminal enterprises and walked away from a 25-year marriage without looking back. Some people would call me cold, calculating, unforgiving. They wouldn't be wrong. But they also wouldn't understand what it felt like to discover that the people you'd trusted most in the world saw you as a joke, a mark, someone so weak and pathetic that they could humiliate you publicly and expect no consequences. I'd spent my career teaching powerful people that actions have consequences. Now I'd taught the same lesson to my own family. The difference was, pharmaceutical executives were strangers. They'd hurt people I'd never met, for money I'd never see. My family had hurt me, personally, deliberately, on the day that should have celebrated 50 years of my life. That made it personal, and I'd always been very good at personal cases. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Grandpa, can I come make pancakes this weekend?" I smiled and typed back, "Saturday morning, I'll have everything ready." Some things were worth rebuilding. Most weren't. But the ones that were deserved better than what my old life had offered. 6 months later, I stood in my new kitchen making pancakes for Emma, while her younger brother Jake played with building blocks on the living room floor. Through the window, I could see the small garden I'd planted, green shoots pushing through the spring soil. "Grandpa, these are the best pancakes ever," Emma announced, syrup dripping down her chin. "That's because they're made with love," I replied, flipping another batch. "Daddy says you're still mad at everyone. What do you think?" She considered this seriously, the way 8-year-olds do when asked important questions. "I think you're sad, but not mad anymore." Smart kid. "Why do you think that?" "Because you smile when we're here. Mad people don't smile." Jake wandered into the kitchen, sticky hands reaching for his sister's plate. "Pancakes. Sit down, buddy. I'll make you your own." As I poured batter into the pan, I thought about how much had changed. Ethan had received 2 years probation and community service in exchange for his testimony against the dealership owner. He was working at a hardware store now, making an honest living for the first time in years. We didn't talk, but he'd started sending child support regularly, which was more than he'd done when he lived in my basement. Molly had avoided criminal charges, but her nonprofit scandal had made her unemployable in the charity sector. She'd moved to California and was working as a waitress while taking online classes to finish her degree. She'd sent me a letter 3 months ago, the first communication since everything fell apart. "Dad," it had read, "I know you'll probably throw this away without reading it, but I wanted you to know that I understand now. What I did was wrong. The nonprofit was supposed to help kids like me get through college, and instead, I used it as my personal piggy bank. I was selfish and stupid, and I'm sorry. I'm trying to be better. I hope someday you can forgive me. Love, Molly." I'd kept the letter in my desk drawer. Forgiveness was a process, not a moment. Mark had been sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. Charlotte had moved to Florida to live with her sister, as far from the scandal as she could get. She'd sent divorce papers through her attorney, which I'd signed without comment. After 25 years of marriage, our relationship had ended with the exchange of legal documents. "Grandpa, can we go to the park after breakfast?" Emma asked. "Of course. Jake, do you want to go to the park?" The 3-year-old nodded enthusiastically, pancake crumbs falling from his mouth. As we walked to the neighborhood park, Emma holding my hand while Jake rode his tricycle ahead of us, I reflected on the strange turns life could take. A year ago, I'd been a forgotten man in a house full of people who didn't respect him. Today, I was a grandfather making memories with children who actually wanted to spend time with me. The park was busy with weekend families, kids on swings, parents chatting on benches, dogs chasing frisbees. Normal life in a normal neighborhood. The kind of peaceful existence I'd thought I wanted. "Push me higher, Grandpa," Emma called from the swing set. I gave her another gentle push and watched her laugh with pure joy. This was what mattered. Not the house I'd lost, or the marriage that had failed, or the family members who'd chosen crime over integrity. This moment, with children who loved me unconditionally. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. For a moment, my old investigative instincts kicked in. Who had this number? How had they gotten it? Then I read the message. "Mr. Brewster, this is Sarah Chen from the State Attorney General's office. We understand you have experience investigating financial fraud. Would you be interested in consulting on some cases? The pay is excellent, and we could use your expertise." I stared at the phone for a long moment. 6 months ago, I thought my career was over. My useful life finished. But apparently word had gotten around about the man who'd single-handedly exposed 3 separate fraud schemes, even if they'd involved his own family. "Grandpa, are you okay?" Emma had stopped swinging and was looking at me with concern. "I'm perfect, sweetheart. Just got some interesting news." "Good news or bad news?" "Good news. Very good news." I typed back, "I'd be very interested. When can we meet?" The response came immediately. "Monday morning, we have several cases that could benefit from your particular expertise." As I pushed Emma on the swings and watched Jake navigate the playground equipment with determined concentration, I thought about second chances, about how sometimes losing everything you thought you wanted was the only way to discover what you actually needed. I'd spent 30 years investigating other people's crimes. Then I'd spent 6 months investigating my own family's betrayals. Now, apparently, I was going back to what I did best, following the money, building cases, and holding people accountable for their choices. The difference was, this time I was doing it on my own terms. No family obligations to distract me, no marriage to maintain, no ungrateful children to support, just me, my skills, and the satisfaction of bringing criminals to justice. And on weekends, I had Emma and Jake, who reminded me that not all relationships were transactions. Some were just love, pure and simple. "Grandpa, can we come back next weekend?" Emma asked as we walked home. "Every weekend if you want. Promise?" "Promise." Some promises were worth keeping. Some people were worth rebuilding for. As for the rest, well, they'd made their choices, and I'd made mine. For the first time in years, I was exactly where I wanted to be.